Anyone actually there? I don't look at the chat when we do this. It's too distracting. No, my mic's right here.
Haggard old Chris. Yo, haggard old Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the CanHammer podcast, episode 217. This is your host, Francois, and as usual, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Nick. How's it going, Nick?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm wonderful. And we have a very, very special, I don't know if I want to say guest, because I don't feel like he's actually a guest. Joining us tonight, we have the OG CanHammer host, the founder of CanHammer, captain of Canada's WTC team, and captain of CanHammer in general. Chris Haynes is here with us. Very special appearance from the elusive Chris Haynes. How's it going, Chris?
Good, man. How are you guys? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, Chris, Nick, and I were at a team tournament this weekend in Sudbury, the Beer and Pretzel Open, and it was so much fun. We decided to do a special episode on team tournaments and a recap of our weekend and our tournament experience. Team tournaments are so much fun. To me, they're the superior way of playing Warhammer, more fun than singles events, and I think we should talk about them more because we keep talking about our GTs, our RTTs, our single events, but the highlight of my tournament year so far was definitely this team event last weekend. Best event so far of the year. So, to get us started, maybe just in case some of our listeners aren't super familiar with how team events are different from normal events, Chris, do you mind explaining to the listeners how team events differ from just singles and why we like them so much?
Well, yeah, no problem. Basically, the best part about a team event is that you can go with your friends. You don't have to play against your friends. And nobody in your car ride home plays better than the rest of the people in the car ride home. So
That's a good way of saying that.
It's arguable, but yeah, because we did have a different person in our car, but even still though, yeah, it's there's something about that. There's a reason that human beings in general love team sports, team play, and to a certain extent, we are members of a province, a country, so we have kind of that team element. And I think that our hobby, for the most part, is so like solo. You're such alone in this 40K hobby. You spend 95% of your time painting, writing lists, reading books, and then very few like amount of your time or very little of your time is spent playing the game. And so I feel like that these team games add in like that new kind of element of kind of group where you write your lists as a team, you make sure your armies are ready as a team, and each person has to have a different faction. So it kind of gives you that satisfaction that you don't get when you're in a singles tournament. Like, when you win the singles tournament, you feel really great, obviously, or when you do well. Even if you do bad, you still feel great. You're playing 40K, let's be honest. But it's a lot different than like winning together as a group and sharing in that kind of experience. And so if you want to get to the mechanics of a team event, it's quite simple. You're allowed 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players, and everybody has to take a different faction. Now that's the kind of the best part for me, is that obviously in years past there's been consistently 1, 2 broken oppressive factions. And so what this allows you to do is it kind of forces you to take subpar books. So you'll have like, 3 or 4 different armies or 5 different armies. And it's not like you're all playing AdMech, you're all playing Dark Eldar, It's nice, and there are different armies that are better in team games, which I guess we can talk about in a bit. But
Yeah, sure. It really changes the entire feel of the game because the limit on codexes means that there's not going to be 5 Drukhari on the other team. There's going to be 1 and 1 AdMech, but there's also going to be probably a Space Marine or something that's maybe considered a little bit less powerful normally. And then what's super fun about that is there's an entire meta game involved in team events where the mechanics of it is your team plays against another team, but you pair up, right? So if your team is 5 players, each one of your player pairs up with a player from the other team. And how we do this pairing, we're not going to explain the pairing process in great detail here, but there's a process where teams put forward defenders and attackers, and players get paired this way, and it adds an entire extra dimension to the match. And in fact, in team events, you can win and lose your round before a single dice has been thrown, just on the pairing element.
It's a good
and
point.
those pairings, and those pairings combined with the restrictions on armies also influence like a meta. Whereas sometimes the armies you bring or the lists you bring, they're not designed to be all comers. You're not designing them to go through a singles tournament. You're designing them to do one job. So that even if you're taking different armies, they may not necessarily be built like you would see in a singles event. So that adds like another level of complexity and diversity to team events.
Yeah, and I guess like we should stress the point that this style of team event is singles, still singles playing it, but you're playing as a team. So 5 in this event, it was 5 individual games, but there is other types of team events that are just as fun, but they're more double based. But that's not what we're talking about today.
Right, there are also team events where you and one buddy will combine your army and play one game as 2 generals. That's what Adepticon does, right?
Yeah.
But here we're talking
No, but
about
in
the
this
WTC style team tournament.
exactly 5 guys, they bring their own lists, each that are different, and they play their own games. And like Francois said, there's this kind of pairing procedure that, as you alluded to, can considerably influence what the likely outcome of that round will be. Sometimes rounds are won or lost in that pairing sequence.
And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail when we go briefly through our rounds at the Sudbury Team Tournament this weekend. But this is something that when you're not used to team tournaments, like before I went to my first team tournaments a few years ago, I didn't fully realize just how important this pairing up of armies is. Because like Chris said, 40K is usually a game where you build your army to face any other army. Because in a singles event, you don't know who you're going to be playing against. But in a team environment, you can skew your army a little bit more, and then your captain, in charge of doing the pairings, can sometimes keep you away from your really bad matchups. Or sometimes you just have to jump on the grenade and take a really bad matchup so your team members have better matchups themselves. So it's a very different experience.
Somebody has to play AdMech at the end of the day, right?
Exactly.
Like that's just the way it is. And it's very cool. Like when I go to a tournament, sometimes I'll design my list like a singles tournament. I'll design my list as an all-comers, but you hedge your bets and you just maybe hope you don't draw that Knight Army or draw that skewed, stupid list. Whereas that's another nice thing about team events is that you can specifically design your list for kind of a smaller pool of enemy armies, and then generally your team or captain can put you in those matches. And so I guess before we move on, we should talk about the roles. And so for this, it was only a 5-man event. There was essentially only one role. I don't think any teams use the other role, the non-playing roles. But so there's basically 2 types of players. There's a captain and a player. And so if you're going to one of these events, the captain is the person that essentially registers the team, takes part in any team votes, rules votes, does the pairings essentially, make sure that their players' lists are in on time and in the correct format, make sure that their team is like ready to go and that the round is finished. And if there's any rules disputes at the row, it's the captains that I guess trump the players. And then if the captains can't solve the rule, it goes on to the referees. Some teams, I think there was one team at this event that had a non-playing coach, which is somebody who takes on the administrative side, so the negotiation, the maybe terrain disputes or things like that, and they kind of, I guess, assist the captain in doing all that kind of work as well. So.
Yeah, that's very, very important. The role of the captain is the most important role in the team. Having been a captain before for a team event, I don't particularly want to do it ever again. It's actually a lot of work, and I'm very grateful that Chris, with all of his WTC experience, was able to take care of all of that and run the team very smoothly this last weekend.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too off topic, but like I feel like that's not, well, that wasn't my experience this weekend. Is once you start getting teams that are more veteran, you're able to kind of delegate more, which is I think key. And so we did a lot of that. Like I didn't talk about any of the Grey Knight lists or any of that stuff. I didn't have to worry about any of that. I kind of just was like, you guys take care of that, and it worked out in the end. But I think that's very important as a captain to clearly assign people under you to do the work. Like, hey, Francois, you're in charge of lists. And then that way, don't carry the world on your shoulders. So
I think that's just very good advice in general, isn't it?
yeah, force people to be accountable and do their own
Yeah, exactly.
work.
Don't take on other people's issues. Just make sure to delegate.
I'll bring the beer, you bring the lists.
That sounds like
that is what happened, basically.
That is what happened.
That's exactly what happened.
All right, before we go on to the actual tournament we went to and talk about the subtleties there, since we briefly alluded to it, Chris, do you want to give our listeners a brief update on the WTC process? Because I think a lot of people are really excited to know what's going on there. I know you're in charge of Team Canada. You're fairly far along in your selection process, so maybe just update our listeners on that.
Yeah, so to a certain extent, we're done selection, and I know that's strange for people to hear, because we selected 17 people, essentially. So what we did is we went through a rigorous kind of training program over the last couple of years, but this year's training really started about June. We set up a weekly kind of training schedule, so everybody had to play other people on the team. It was on TTS for the most part. Some people played in person, but it was very important to use TTS because it allowed people to play people. Like I got to play Alex out in Vancouver. You know what I mean? Like you get to learn and know these players that you don't normally get to see. I get to play the guys in Toronto more regularly, make sure that they're, performing, and that, kind of judge them, which is my job, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. And so we went through this process. We had something like 28 applicants originally, but we sadly had to cut down to 16, which ended up being 17 because we had a non-playing applicant. So we took them as well into the final kind of group. We are calling this final 16 Team Canada 2022. So 8 of these 16 players are going to get to play, but technically every single one of them is a team member. They'll have a team shirt, team dice. We are working together to train for the event. And so I don't want to take that away. Even if you're not there playing, you're a part of the team, right? You're helping the team with lists. You're helping the team with, maybe even lending armies, training them, and just making sure, because the end goal is that the team wins and not necessarily that individuals get to play. So that's where we're at right now. Is we have chosen 16 kind of amazing people. Well, I'll say 15 because I won't include myself. Or no, it is 16. I did speak.
15 because Nick is on the list, right?
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say not me, but
that's what I thought he was alluding to.
So I guess the top 16 of the Canadian team, which is the team for this year, is Cody, Alex Dougal, Bruno, Devin, Dustin, Eric, Jeremy, Max is the non-playing applicant coach, Nick, who's right there, Ridvin, Tim Dietlifs, Dom, Jason, Jeff, Brown, Will Paul, and Yoshi, aka Diogo Pita. So
that's a very strong team, and I'll be really interested to follow your exploits over in Europe. For anyone listening not knowing what the WTC is, it's the World Team Championship, a annual, well, except when there's a COVID pandemic, annual tournament of representatives from a bunch of different countries. How many countries total? I don't remember offhand.
I think they're up to 34 right now. It follows the FIFA country selection. So just in case people may wonder, is that really a country? I don't see them at the Olympics. Well, that's because FIFA does it a certain way.
Well, there's like Team Wales, yeah.
Yeah, so mainly the UK is broken up into many different countries. So you got Gibraltar, you got England, Scotland, and Wales, Northern Ireland.
So the Warhammer World Championship, basically. And
it's 40K only. It was originally in the European Team Championship, and then we had a vote like 3 years ago to break away and form kind of our own more world-centric entity, which is pretty cool. And so it's basically, I would say, one of the most competitive 40K events that I've ever seen or been to. I've gone, I think, 5 or 6 times now, and it's easy for us in North America to sit here and we're North Americans. We basically think we run the world and we're the center of the world, and that's just kind of the way it is. But when you start playing these countries, like there's some countries in Europe that their 40K scenes make our scenes look like we're little babies playing with toys, right? And it's hard. Like the skill and the knowledge and the practice that some of these countries and teams put into it is insane, right? And call it Germany for one of them. Like obviously Germany's good at everything they do, but this is insane, right? So
Well,
it's
it's
very
also there's a language barrier, right? Those of us who consume 40K media, we consume it in English, but of course there's an entire German, Polish, French, Italian scene as well that we simply so we know the Nick Nanavadis and the Richard Zieglers because they are in the English world, but there's very, very strong players who are over in Europe that you've never heard of because they're not part of this English media environment.
yeah.
I know I follow a little bit of the French scene just because that's my native language, and there's an entire world out there that's very different.
I don't know if they would say that over in France, but
Well, they do use a lot of English words when they play 40K, so it's very funny because it's a very bilingual thing. I do enjoy watching, and now I'm kicking myself for not remembering the name of the Battle Report channel, but there's one French Battle Report channel on YouTube that I quite enjoy watching. For those of you French speakers, if you're curious, to send me a message on Twitter or something, I'll find it and tell you which one it is. But this event that we went to past weekend, but also usually team events that you go to, I'm guessing you're thinking of as practice for the main event, the WTC, right?
yeah, and so that's actually I don't know what sparked the I kind of do what sparked the Sudbury one, but team tournaments was not a thing when I started. And like I've been playing competitive 40K since 5th edition 40K, so that's been quite a few years. I played competitive fantasy at the same time as 5th and before that. This really started out of Warhammer Fantasy Battles. They're the ones that started with the first kind of team event, and then I think they added 40K kind of at the same time or year two. And yeah, so we treat these events as practice events, kind of. It's really hard to always take just like if we were just to take Canada 1 and 2 to these events, it would kind of get stale after a while. And so what we like to do is, certain people have their own teams already established and from the past, and so we kind of try to mix it up a little bit. That's why, like, Francois was playing with, I guess you were playing with 4 other WTC players.
Our team was 4 WTC players and me.
Yeah.
But
so
it's
cool.
it's Team CanHammer, so I belong still.
But yeah, we brought I believe it was the first WTC style team event to Canada back in the with the CanHammer team tournament back in Cambridge. I don't know, like 6-7 years ago. So, and then since then, I know that Sudbury started with, I think it was the Armitages, kind of took the CanHammer team tournament model, and then they did their own thing, and then they got out of the hobby, and this new group, just Beer and Pretzels, they kind of, I guess, continued what the Armitages started. I don't even know if I don't want to draw that comparison if they don't like that or didn't want to do that, but and now it is what it is, and so it's kind of interesting that like we go all the way up to Sudbury in Northern Ontario to play in this. Like, I guess it's like the second largest team tournament in the country. So,
and it does seem
right. Like, where are the other ones? I don't know.
It does seem like it's becoming more popular, though. I know Frontline Gaming in the U.S. is putting team events together now, which is something they never used to do before. So this is a format that's growing, and I'm not saying that I would go to a team event every single week, or I still do enjoy my singles events. But if you have the chance and you've never been, it's a very fun way of enjoying 40K.
Yeah, not me though. I would literally, if I could give up singles, I would give up singles. Yeah,
you could give up singles,
and not just this style of team, even like a doubles team. For me, it's the superior way to play it because of the fact that, and let's face it, I've done this in the past. I still kind of do it. You can chase a meta in this game, and you can, those that have, I guess, larger pockets, deeper pockets, faster at painting and building. You can, I guess, supplement some of your player skill by jumping army to army to army to army to army to kind of play the new hotness, right? We all see it online. There's complaints about it. There's nothing wrong with it. Doing that. That's part of the competitive scene, If there's a new style of tire or engine or whatever, like, professional racers are going to jump to that. Like, they're not going to stay stale. So I'm not dissing it by any means, but the thing that I like about the team format is it rewards the people that know kind of the variety. They know suboptimal or lower tier armies thoroughly.
Yeah.
So, if you're like back in the olden days, it's not true right now, sadly, but, back maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago, having a super good Tau player for a WTC team or an ET or it was like amazing because back when we had lots of soup armies, you're only allowed one of each book, right? So if I'm gonna say, like, I'm gonna make up an example. Say Francois is like, I play Eldar, Dark Eldar, and let's say those are the 2 best books. You're playing both of them as a soup or mixed army. and you're winning all these events. Well, that doesn't necessarily help the team because the two best books, everybody soups. So it's like, we need other books to play. And so having things that are like lower tier, like Tyranids, like really good Tyranid players are extremely valuable in team events because, they're very rare and they are effective. So
it does allow the army specialists to truly shine, which they can do in singles events, but they really comes out in teams events, especially the bigger one. So the one we went to was 5 players, but the actual WOTC is 8 player teams. And once you go past the top 3 or 4 codexes in the game, then there's a lot of room actually to flex with army specialists. So you take your currently Dark Eldar, Grey Knights, Orcs, and then after that, once it starts to AdMech, once it starts to fall off a little bit, then you can flex and go, well, there's all these other books that are kind of sort of in the mix. Let's just find the best players who are specialists with those armies and bring them in. So that's another reason why this is such a fun format.
Yeah, and right now, this is actually the first time I've ever seen 4 books kind of that powerful that were that obvious of choices. Like normally it's like 1 or 2 obvious lists. Like I think the one last CanHammer team tournament, it was like, the Flyrant list, and then there was like the Poxwalker list. So every team had 2 of those, and then the other 3 were kind of mixed. This was the first time that I've ever seen where it was like vast majority of the teams had the same composition and style. So,
and let's specify that we went to an event that was still balance update. So the balance update came out before the event, but it was just only a few days before, so we didn't use it. So I played my pre-nerf quote unquote Drukhari list and so on and so forth. All right, well, let's get into the meat of things, and as we discuss our experience at the tournament, we can explore some of the subtleties of playing and experiencing a team event. Now, Nick's been very patient and very quiet so far. Chris and I have been the only one talking. So, Nick, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the Beer and Pretzel Open, where it was, what it looked like, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sure. Well, the Beer and Pretzels Open was this past weekend. It was at the Crucible Club in Sudbury, Ontario. So that's like
where's Sudbury, Nick?
Tell our
listeners where Sudbury is.
South of where I grew up, let's be honest.
Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, right now where everybody lives, where they are, everybody makes fun of me for living in the sticks. But actually, they have to come pick me up, and then we drive another 3-4 hours down the road. So, so it could be far for a lot of us. But it was, like we said, it was a 5-person team event. And over 5 rounds, and it had teams from Toronto, had teams from Ottawa, from Sudbury, from Quebec. So like it was
Sault Ste. Marie, my hometown. Come on.
Yeah, it was quite a diverse teams from my town, Petawawa. So it was a diverse group of players, and I mean, I guess since it's kind of one of the few events that most of us in this area, like say Eastern Canada, have been able to attend, it obviously attracted a lot of the Warhammer kind of sharks, if you will. I mean, it wasn't an easy spread. It didn't take long before teams started collecting their best players, and so it was pretty ruthless. I've been quiet. I just wanted to ask Chris, as our esteemed guest. Chris, leading into this event, what was like your strategy? What were you thinking leading up to this? How did you plan it? How did you strategize? What were you considering? What were you,
Yeah. How do we pick the team? Or like we can start with that. Like,
sure, whatever.
We should, and then we could get into like our composition, our list, which would be kind of nice. Mm-hmm. So how we picked the team was pretty kind of easy. Is we haven't played in a real team tournament in a couple of years. I've been playing TTS online tournaments constantly, and so I always played for Team CanHammer, but that was always when I was hosting the podcast and kind of running all the, being more active than I am now. I did take a step back. I had an acting position at work, and so which required a lot more of my time over the last almost year or half a year, plus a little bit before. But so then that just ended like right before this event. So I've been a lot busier than I normally am, and we were looking at it, and it was. I kind of felt it was appropriate to just pick a CanHammer team minus Darren because we didn't want that much lead weight, So that was kind of the obvious choice. Is it was like the 3 of us, and then I don't go anywhere without Jason, and that's just like him and I are kind of joined at the hip. So that was easy, right? Like, so for us, so we decided to do that, and then Will Paul, who we play all the time, he's
He's a good friend of ours.
Yeah, he's a good friend of ours. We just like, okay, we picked him up. He's an Ottawa guy, so it didn't put a lot of thought. It wasn't like we decided on killers, and we picked this team before we even had the top 16 of the WTC picked, and I don't even think Francois had won an event yet when we picked this team, and then he won like all the events in the Eastern Ontario. But so
I wanted to make you proud, Chris. I needed to prove my worth.
Good, yeah, you were this close to getting cut before you won that event. No, so we kind of just decided let's be like the friends team and let's go nuts, right, and have a good time. And so going into that, I was like, let's make this team work the best that it possibly can. And so that kind of made it easy, as I've been playing Sisters hyper competitively for 2 years now. I've been doing okay with them, not amazing. A couple firsts, but a lot of like seconds and thirds and lower, and just like they're not as a staple in the meta, so they're a little bit different. So I thought that'd be great to take. Francois has been dominating with his Dark Eldar, so that was kind of an easy pick. Jason dominates with his Space Marine, so another easy pick. And then we had kind of two people left, and we had the I'm going to say obvious picks, right? As far as non-mainstream armies, which are the top lists as we alluded to earlier, we had everything we had all the non-top tier list picks. So we had to pick, I would say, 2 from the AdMech Orcs and Grey Knights. And then so it kind of came up that Will owns the AdMech, so he took the AdMech, and then it kind of stuck with Nick with the Grey Knights. And we picked the Grey Knights over the Orcs simply because it was I think it came down to my decision in the end. I don't know if we all agreed on it or not. I can't remember, but the Orcs just were underperforming. The Orcs had a huge spike when the book dropped, and they were doing really, really well. And then I kind of felt, because I play Orcs, right, and they're near and dear to my heart, and I kind of felt like they were underperforming. My Sisters, I had a few good wins against buggy lists. I had a few good wins against plain lists that I don't really just didn't see the kind of appeal to them. So we decided that's why we decided with AdMech over the Orcs. And then the Grey Knights for Nick was kind of an easier choice, right? From my perspective, they're very straightforward. We owned all the models; they were all painted, minus like 5 servitors, so it was a no-brainer, easy choice.
Yeah, we pooled our collections together. My Grey Knights and Nick's Grey Knights, we just mixed together, and because we wanted different brotherhoods, different colors. So that worked.
Yeah, it was easy to distinguish the different brotherhoods like that.
But
that's a good idea. Yeah.
Let's preface this by saying that Nick went into this tournament with exactly 1 practice game with Grey Knights. So before round
TTS.
On TTS, before round 1, Nick had played exactly 1 game with Grey Knights, which, I'll be honest, I was a little bit worried.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't helping you guys either.
Is it okay if we talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's not shame it all, but
no, there's no.
It's kind of funny because the weekend before, Nick kicked the shit out of a lot of people with Thousand Suns, right? And so I had a lot of hard feelings about, did we make the right decision with the Grey Knights over the Thousand Suns, or but at the time that we made the decision, the Thousand Suns were too new, too untested. And we were scared that you don't want to test a new concept in the wild, right? You want to test it at home, and we didn't have enough time. So in case people are wondering, and I felt that with the amount of games that were played with Thousand Suns, which is, I don't know how many, 10 with the new book. Mm-hmm. Maybe you played with the new book, 10.
Yeah, I played about, say, 10-ish with the new book. Before the GT, I got second next to Francois. So before that, it was like Stutter Snotling plus, I don't know, 5 to 10 practice games.
Yeah, so you're looking at when you're looking at how much more straightforward the Grey Knights are compared to the Thousand Suns, 1 game to 10, it's not a huge difference.
Yeah, because let's be honest, the Grey Knights are a very powerful, very strong codex, and there is some subtlety to it, but it's very much a sledgehammer, right? So Nick could go into it with a little bit less practice than a more subtle army, say Thousand Suns, and still expect to do well.
Yeah, the way I think about it is... Oh, go ahead, Nick. Go on.
No, well, I was going to say, yeah, I gave you guys a hard time. I understand that. Half joking too.
Uh-huh.
I like my armies, right? I like Chaos. I love Thousand Suns. I want to play them. But, when you're going to a team event, you do have to pick kind of the best list. You have to kind of pick the best setup. And it's kind of similar to the orcs, like Chris said, the orcs kind of they had this performance spike when they came out, and then it kind of tapered off. Either people were figuring out how to play against them, or they had to have that huge go second drop off. Like their power going first is great, going second they're bad. They lose a lot of their performance. And so we didn't really want to have that kind of variability in our list. So that's kind of like, I know we were torn, but ultimately I know where that decision came from. We didn't want that huge drop off in performance if that player had to go second. And then, of course, there was 1,000 Suns. And like the list had to be in before the Dragon GT. And I struggled to find something that I felt worked. After the list came out, we went to the Dragon GT. And like, anything outside of Dark Eldar annihilated. But then there's two issues too with Thousand Suns is they struggle into Grey Knights and Dark Eldar. And what armies did we expect to see in every 5-man team?
And they had them. Yeah, they all had them. Yeah.
So we couldn't have my Thousand Suns, like say, quote unquote, defender list be a red versus 2 of the 5 armies, right? So no, it makes sense. I mean,
40% of the field, right? Like
40% of the field I can't play into. So anyways, no, it 100% makes sense. I understood that, and I think that was the right decision, clearly.
And spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, we won.
Through our rounds, but Nick did very well with the Grey Knights.
Well,
and also the Grey Knights are one of those armies.
Like, let's be honest, we're talking about this because people want to know the real experience, right? And the real experience of a team is you have a meeting and you don't agree, and a decision has to be made, and there's hard feelings, but at the end of it, we're all friends, and we pull together. And it wored, right? In this case,
exactly.
We twisted Nick's arm a little bit, but he did the best he could with the circumstances. And you know what?
So that's what sent me home with his collection, and
I gave Nick 3,000 points of Grey Knights, and I said, "Go home and figure this out."
And I put my collection together with his, and made it work.
Yeah, the thing I really like about the Grey Knights, though, is that a lot of their pieces operate independently from other pieces in the army, and so that's like super valuable in a team format for like somebody who has to, and I guess we'll talk about this, go into some of the harder choices that the team doesn't want to play into. So it allows you that, for example, my sister army, if I lose my sacrosanct, I'm just like done. Like there's no game. Whereas the Grey Knights, each piece can kind of go its own way. So it allows you to preserve a lot of points and objectives that way, which is really huge as well.
Let's talk about pairings. And I think we have the perfect segue to talk about the art of pairing, because our very first round at the tournament was, we thought going to be a challenging round, because we get grudged by Dominic's team, the Northern Defenders. Good team. Dominic's a great player. He's got strong lists, strong players on his team, and this is our round 1, right?
And he's got Bruno. Like Bruno essentially tied.
Bruno and Dom were second table at Stutter Scrub, right? Table 2 at last round.
Right.
Yeah,
so
and Bruno went on
very top
6 wins. Yeah.
So we go into it, and it's not going to be an easy round. Any way you slice it. We were even a little bit worried, like, are we going to lose round 1? Is that going to be like our weekend? And I think that round was not exclusively, but a large part of the reason why we won that round, I think, comes down to how we handled the pairings. And Chris, since you were in charge of pairings, can you tell us a little bit of your thought process behind the pairing, and specifically what was the turning point in the pairing process?
Yeah, so we had a pretty standard approach. We had 3 kick-ass awesome players with awesome lists: Nick, Francois, Will, Admac, Grey Knights, Dark Eldar. They scream, "I can attack you and murder everything." And then we had the 2 defenders, which was my very stable Sister Horde. You can check these out on BCP if you want.
30 sacrosancts. No, 27.
Yeah, 30 sacrosancts. No Vol. Lots of little characters. Armada Lady, so a lot of fighting and shooting on death. A very defensive, grinding list. We had Jason's Space Marines, which was, I go second, I can pull 8-9 points out of every match, and if I go first, I can potentially,
Jason's list is a very aggro Marine list, so triple Invictor Warsuits and Ultramarines for the redeploy, but also a Blood Angels detachment to put Death Company in your face. So going second to that list is an absolute nightmare. But even if he goes second, he still has tools to grind down some points.
Correct.
Jason's a Marines expert. And so like he came up with a list and none of us were like, you know what, you take it, Jason. You like, it was just like,
Yeah, I looked at it and I went, that makes no sense to me, but you know what? I trust you. Run with it.
Yeah.
you do you, boo. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so our plan was quite simple. Jason's our first drop. He can get points into anybody. He's not going to he has no double reds for the most part, lots of yellows. And then it's like a coin flip. You know, he can win games if he goes first and has like a really hot turn, which is huge because it allows us to put him down. They put down 2 attackers, let's say, and they're taking a coin flip chance. Hey, we're going to get mediocre points with our attacking list. And then but there's a chance that we lose this game, even slightly, because of the fact that if he goes first, it's like, I got you. So I thought it was pretty cool.
That's huge because it's basically win-win for us, right? We're taking out one of their scary lists, and even then, he probably gets some points out of it.
Yeah, and so we knew that there was. So I've played Bruno in the past. I've played a ton of Harlequin's Eldar. You know, one of my good friends, Tim, plays Harlequin's Eldar. Isaac played Harlequin Eldar last year. So I played a ton of games against them. It doesn't always go well. Let's put it that way. So we were worried about kind of Bruno and Dom, as we said. They're obviously their 2 best players. The other 3 guys, although they're awesome people, aren't as good as those 2. So we paired, and
these are few people are as good as those 2.
Yeah, exactly. And so we paired under kind of that assumption that we put Jason down and we tried to take like a nice, I guess, juicy win if we could take it, because we knew that I was suspecting that Bruno and Dom would do very well in their games. And so I concentrate all my pairing efforts on the other 3 guys. We wanted to have like 3 grains, and then it didn't matter what happened to those 2 games because, you know, and if we can pull ties against them, or if we can, you know, win slightly, or you know, if one of us gets dumpstered, it doesn't matter. We got the 3 wins. So we put Jason down first to kind of to take one of those wins out. I had a suspicion that they thought that I would be a defender and that they were saving Dom and Bruno for me. I ended up being correct. So when I went down, they gave me Dom and Bruno. And then we held Francois kind of back. And so we sat there and we discussed this like straight up. I said, if I take Bruno, if I take Dom, I guarantee you they're putting Francois out the back. So let me start again. So I had Bruno and Dom in front of me. And so Francois and I believe it was Nick were put down towards them. And so I had a suspicion that they thought that I was going to reject Bruno. And they did not want Dom into Francois' Dark Eldar, and they did not want, they didn't want that to happen. So they
wanted Bruno into me because he
into him,
at
yeah,
stud like 2 weeks before.
So basically, I had their cards, and I went, if I take Bruno, we're putting Dom into the Dark Eldar, which to us is a big green, right? And so I think Francois and I, straight as day, I said that, and we all agreed as a team, yep. I said, I'm going to take the loss with Bruno, or I had it as an orange in my sheet, which is a low, kind of a low, not a really bad loss, not like a red, but it's not a huge, it's a big enough loss. And then we did that. And of course they played exactly how we predicted they did. And Francois got the Space Marine match, which he's won, I think, 3 times in a row. And I had the Eldar Indirect Fire Harlequins, which I think I lost the last 2 times. I lost against Bruno and Tim, and then I won the time against Isaac before that, and lost it, I think, to Tim before that. So
whichever one of us was going to go into, Bruno was going to go in as an underdog, but by taking it for yourself, you guaranteed the matchup between me and Dom, which is a matchup that I wanted and Dom did not want. So that's
and it also it gave Nick a win, it gave Jason a win, and it gave Will a coin flip win, but he got it in the end. So and it worked out. We played our games, and I don't know how detailed you guys want to go into it, but
well, I don't think we need to go into the details of the games themselves, but the big surprise of that round was that Chris actually managed to win against Bruno, in part because you picked the right table.
So that was part of it, and they were a little bit. Bruno and I had discussion about that. They screwed up their table pick, and it was. I think it was because their team didn't. They had some. Let's face it. They had some like not as familiar with the format players, so I ended up picking an open table. I ended up getting first turn, and I ended up killing 4 boats turn 1 with Retributors. And then because I'm playing Armored Lady, when he jumped out and shot my Retributors, the one unit shot on death and took down another boat.
Yeah, so we ended up taking that
great.
round with a big win, 77-23. Now, that was a much larger win than I think we were expecting. Just going into it, we expected it to be much closer. But that sets us really nicely for the tournament for the weekend. So we're starting on a high, and everything's going real well. All 5 of us win our games. Nick's game was a little bit closer, but still a win. And meanwhile, Jason's go first button worked, and you got a 20-0.
Yeah, I mean,
Jason went first, killed 2 tanks. Jason went first and shot 2 tanks off like that, apparently, with 2 shots, and then killed something else. It was game over. Yeah.
I remember my first game. Well, first I got to play against JF, and I was looking forward to that because he's a Van Du, and I'm a former RCR. So there's like Army rivalry there. Anyways, but I remember my first game, turn 1, I put the clock on me, and I'm like, give me a couple minutes, I have to read my book.
And Nick kept doing that.
And that was Dark Eldar. You played Dark Eldar too.
So I played against Dark Eldar.
Fancy, like that, as we said earlier, we took the Grey Knights to counter the Dark Eldar, right?
So Grey Knights play really well in the Dark Eldar.
They play okay. I would say really well, but they can go.
Well, maybe my experience is colored by always playing. Jean was a very good player with Grey Knights, but I'm struggling into
right now, Francois. That sounds a little mean of you right now. I don't know.
yeah, exactly. But anyways, having not played the army and going up against Dark Eldar, yes, I had to put the clock on me for a couple of minutes just to review my rules, make sure where I was at. But it worked out.
Which throughout the weekend, that must have been very frustrating for your opponents of you just putting the clock on yourself and going, I got to read my codex for a minute here. I don't know what I'm doing.
Why, it's on my time.
You kept beating people.
No, that's fine. And that's why chess clocks are amazing, because sometimes when you don't use them, you finish your game after an hour and you go, man, I should have just sat and thought about my turn 2, and maybe I would have got 10 more points.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that. Feel free to do it. And clocks are important. I still think chess clocks, even though I love them, they are an imbalance in the game, in that the game isn't designed for both players to share the time. It's designed for the entire game to end in that time. And it actually hurts people that win big early because they have more to do. But that's a different show.
Yes, we can go through that topic a different time. So round 2, though, we go up against Rage against the Machine Spirit, which I'm going to say is a great team name. That's another
amazing team name.
Fun thing about team tournaments is people come up with their fun names. I mean, we're kind of boring because we're the CanHammer podcast, so we're the CanHammer team, but there was a lot of really fun names over there at that tournament.
It's not boring. That's revolutionary. When I came up with that was revolutionary.
But that was back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, Chris.
Yeah,
that is true.
So the Rage against the Machine Spirit, they are I believe, local Sudbury team. I hope I'm not wrong with that.
Nope, Sault Ste. Marie, man. How was the Sioux team?
Oh, that's just okay. Sorry.
Right, that was Custodies. They had Custodies.
Yeah, they had. I played against Orc. So we go into it. We don't know them going in. We know most of the people of these things, but every once in a while you come across a team that you don't know. So we play those guys. We know nothing about them. We don't know.
Sioux's pretty far, buddy, and I haven't been there in 15 years. So
we look at the lists. They have lists that seem like a good list. So we go into it kind of blind. Like against Dom's team, we have the advantage of knowing the player skill of each individual member of the team, right? But we go in kind of blind, and again, the pairing process does its job. I don't think we need to go into great detail there, other than I ended up paired against Orcs, which made for a very butt-clenching game for me once I went second to Orcs with planes and buggies.
Dark Eldar deserve it, though. They can perform under pressure. They deserve that, yeah.
That's how much Chris hates Dark Eldar. He was happy our player went second to Orcs.
Yeah, Chris was like, you deserve it.
Well, I was glad, man. You mean the army of all mortal wounds got to play Custodies and all mortal wounds? 12.
Well, that's the thing. Also, our other pairings were very,
very good.
Very good. So this is something where in a team event, you have to accept that every once in a while, 1 or 2 of your players are going to get suboptimal pairings for the rest of the team to get better pairings. Trust me, I didn't want to play into Orcs, but if it helps the team for me to be paired into Orcs, perfectly happy to do it. And white knuckle through their first couple of turns, and in my case, claw draw. By ITC rules, I won, but by team tournament rules, I drew 10-10, which honestly, against Orcs, a draw is perfectly fine.
We should talk about that, because a lot of people I talk like this, and I think it drives people nuts that don't know anything about it. So they don't use straight scoring; we use differential.
Oh, right. We
So
should
it
explain
doesn't
that.
matter. So if you score 80 points and your opponent scores 80 points, 81 points, they don't win. That's a tie in our world because it's
Right.
differentials 5 points. More than 5 points gets you 1 point. And so by every 5 points that you win a round by, you get an additional point, and your opponent loses a point. So when Francois says I 10-10'd them, that's like saying a tie. If somebody says they 20-0'd somebody, it means they won by 50 plus points.
Which is hard to do, right? Think
Yes.
about the games of Warhammer that you've played, and it's rare that you crush someone by 50 points. But in a team tournament, sometimes you build skew lists that are able to do that just to bank those points.
Yeah, and I like to think of it as like one objective is like 1 point in this edition. So because most objectives are worth 5 points essentially. So if you think about it that way, it's like, if you say 12-8, the guy won by 2 objectives, which is like not a lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So very, very close, very tight game for me. And then what's funny is Nick also tied his game. Who were you playing? You're playing Custodes, right?
No,
I was playing against Blood
you were
Angels.
playing. Yeah, sorry, you're playing Blood Angels. And tell us a little bit about that Blood Angels matchup.
Well, I had no idea.
You don't see Blood Angels that often in the wild.
You see them all the time. They're pretty popular. I think they are. I'm being serious. I think they're maybe like the third most popular Space Marine army.
Maybe it's just an Ottawa thing where I haven't seen a Blood Angels player in a while.
Well, I last played against Blood Angels at Stutter Snotling when I played with Thousand Suns, and I won against Blood Angels there. But it's kind of a very different match in that regard. This one, to be honest, I had no idea what to expect. A bit because the Blood Angels list was a little different, had Eradicators and whatnot, but it still had the Death Company. It still had the Sanguinary Guards, Vanguard Veterans, whatever else. And a lot of this came from, I don't know really how to play Grey Knights at this point. So I'm just kind of like, all right. And because this mission was the 6 objectives, I kind of misunderstood it a bit. And he was able to play the objective game more so than I thought. So every time I try to make a play, and also the trading is a little skewed. Like one Sanguinary Guard can kill like 5 interceptors, right? Yeah. So every time I try to, kill Sangard and one would live, one or two could still kill like an unit of interceptors, right? So it was really hard to get those guys. Anyways, and then of course the Eradicators, you don't see them too often, right? But for a Grey Knight list, Eradicators in cover with Transhuman are really tough to get rid of. So I was like, oh, I'll pick them up. So you shoot, you kill one, and the Sang Priest brings one back to life or whatever it is, and you're like, uh-oh. And then if he gets a hot turn of shooting, he can lift a Grandmaster or a Dread Knight. And that's exactly what happened. Turn 1, he shot, or turn 1 or turn 2, he shot and killed 2 Dread Knights. I was like, oh boy. I mean, yeah. I'm like, I think the team is expecting me to win big here. And at this moment, I'm kind of losing. So,
but in the end, it didn't matter because Nick and I tied. But then the rest of the team picked up, Jason picked up a 17, Chris picked up an 18, and Will picked up a 20.
In one turn. Will picked it up in one turn.
Yeah.
I believe Will went first with his planes, and then the opponent went.
I quit.
There's no point. I think you killed 2/3 of my army. I'm done.
Yeah, so that was
special.
Pre-nerf AdMech with triple planes. It's a very mean list, which is thankfully not legal anymore.
Yeah.
But Will going first and getting 20 was a bit of a theme this weekend with that very mean AdMech list.
Yeah, my list my new list just really counters Custodians too. Because there's so few units and it was 6 objectives. It was I was able to jump my Retributors out, shoot his Dreadnought. If I didn't kill it or if I crippled it, and then Dominion's Mortal Wounds, he would shoot me and then I would shoot on death on a 4+ and kill it in his turn. So it was,
that was
when you have so few models and you have 12 multi-meltas and the guy had 20 models, it's kind of sketch, right? Especially when they're shooting on death and shooting at the end of the turn. But it was cool. It was a fun round. They were nice guys. And yeah, we got most of our pairings pretty good. Nick and Francois took the hard matchups, and then the rest of us took, I'm not going to say easy ones, but the more favorable, in terms of the meta, right?
Right, especially when your Dominions can just snap their fingers and do 6 mortal wounds to Custodians. They really don't like that.
Yeah, and one thing we didn't talk about is this edition is very rock, paper, scissors. I don't think that's controversial to say. And so in the more rock, paper, scissors a meta or edition is, the more important your pairings are. because if you're able to put the paper into the rock lists and these scissors into the paper lists, it's kind of gross. But
and I do feel like we paired really well all weekend. And that was, Chris was in charge of the pairing, so congratulations to Chris for getting the pairings right. But I feel like we paired favorably every single round.
Yeah, and people knew. So the thing that I liked is that this is, I guess, the sign that you paired well. Is it wasn't like Francois would get paired in this, I'm going to get a 20, and then he gets a 10. It was, you're going in there to get as many. Like, there was a game later on, which we'll talk about, but it's like Nick was like, it's like, get a 6. Get as many points as you can get, and that's it. Don't worry about winning, right? Like, we knew it was a loss. And that's if you shouldn't get blindsided. You should be like, this is a winning match, that's a losing match. And if you know that, you play like a dick, right? Like, I guess we can go on to our next round.
Sure.
If you want.
Salty Astartes.
Yeah, they were so much fun. They were like, like I think at the end of that round, we all kind of were like, that was like really fun. Like, oh my god.
Those guys had a great attitude. Maybe less experienced tournament goers, and when they
all had the hardest list though.
Yeah, that's true.
They had the top medalists, but they were like chill.
There was a cool GSC player on their team.
That's right. Yeah.
So that I played and tabled in 2 turns.
Lucky Francois.
I got the good matchup there. It was, but they were great guys, great attitude. I think when they saw that they had drawn us, they were a little bit intimidated. They came into it with a bit of that factor, and that definitely skews it even more, right? When you go into a pairing and you expect to lose, usually it happens. But again, I feel like we paired favorably into them. The games went really great, but great bunch of guys, really fun. The GSC player that I played against, very new to the game, and he's playing GSC, right? So he's kind of stacking the odds against them, but he had a very positive attitude. We had a chat after the game about what he could have done a little bit differently, and he's really excited for his GSC Codex coming up soon.
Yeah, I don't know if it was this. Yeah, I think it was this game. I played a Grey Knight player, and this is where it came down to. I was expecting to get it. I know I did, but I want to say this is where I took really wonky secondaries, and I played a very passive game because I thought I was going to lose for some reason. I wasn't confident with his list. Those Dread Knights, when they go off, right? You can't kill them. My multi-multis don't work. And then when they push into me, it's really scary at times. And I have Mortal Wounds, but he has 5 ups against Mortal Wounds. He could spike it. So I was pretty worried. So I took a lot of really passive secondaries, and I'm thinking of the wrong game. This was against Bruno. When I played Bruno, sorry, I'm out to lunch here. But when I played him, I did this, and I took very passive secondaries, and I thought I was going to lose the game. And so he was asking me, why didn't you take this? Why didn't you take that? And this also applied to my Grey Knight game too. And it was like, if I think I'm going to lose, I'm not going to take secondaries that I get a big payout for if I do well. I take secondaries that I can always get 6 to 9 on, right? So
that's the other thing about team events is minimizing a loss is often just as valuable to your team than winning big, right?
Well, that's kind of how I went into it, because I got paired into the Orcs kind of buggy.
It was your turn to get the Orc buggies.
Yeah, I mean, and the opponent JC was awesome. He was like such a great opponent, and he was super excited to play us. Actually, I was like, I can't believe I playing CanHammer, and I was like, oh, that's great. Well, you got kind of the water boy.
They listen to the podcast, so hi guys.
yeah, hi guys. It was an amazing game, but it was Orcs, right? So I was like, well, if I go second here, I can't get a 0. Like we said, we don't know this team, so I have no idea what's going on the other tables. The boys could be fighting for their lives, so I can't be like too aggressive with the secondary. It's the same thing. The Purifying Ritual, the free whatever 15.1 for Grey Knights. Banners, and I knew I had to kill vehicles if I didn't want to get tabled in 2 turns, so bring it down. And it was just like he went first, and so automatically I was like, okay, I reserved everything, but it was like he went first, so I was like, oh well, I'm probably not going to win this, but maybe I can like stem the loss of points and like claw out that 9, and that's what happened. But then I heard you guys did spectacularly well, so I was like, oh, okay.
Well, I only got a 12. I was terrified of Grey Knights, man. And so I took Engage and Rod and my Faith Dice, and I literally moved my whole army one way while he moved his army the other way. And then I left speed bumps for him. So I would just leave one unit of Sacrosanct on an objective with another unit of Sisters behind him. And when he came up, they just jumped out and charged him. he would then I would kill his 2 units forward, then he would come and kill them, but I was still back on. So I literally did like a running retreat around the board into his objective, because I feel like if I would have played it differently, maybe I would have won bigger, but I also think I could have lost bigger. So
that's it.
I played super cagey. Yeah.
Exactly. And this mission was the hammer and anvil with like the 3 objectives like clearly on each side. So I was like, I mean, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do if he goes first. His buggies can all sit on objectives, and it's going to take me 3 turns to get on top of them. By then, I'll be dead. So it's like just play that super kind of defensive game. That means if I do go first, I might only win by 2 or 3 points. But it also means if I go second, I only lose by 1 or 2 points, right? So, that's kind of the strategy there.
So that's win number 3 for us, end of day 1. And at this point, we now know that we're going to play
we're first place
or scrub the next day, right? And
we're
scrub.
First place.
Were we ever not in first place? Round 1.
Were not in first.
Round 1, were we in first place? No, we weren't.
We weren't. That's true.
Yeah, but after round 2, first place.
After that. First place the whole way, but we know we're playing Stutter Scrub, right? And these are dangerous players. We know them; they're friends of ours. Is their entire team, not their entire team, but most of their team is also on Team Canada. They have very dangerous players. They have very good lists. If I had to rank all the other teams, excluding ourselves, before going to the tournament, I would have put them at the top of my list.
Pre-tournament, I put them above us. If I was being honest with you guys, I thought for sure they were going to be. I thought for sure they were going to win it. I was pretty close. I was like, it's between them and maybe us, and I definitely thought that their composition might have been better than ours. I had a lot of doubts about bringing Sisters over Orcs, as I think we kind of talked about earlier, but I'm glad we went with our gut.
In hindsight, that was the right choice. Yeah,
because the orcs didn't perform.
Too inconsistent.
They didn't perform. They're just a coin flip, right?
Yeah, orcs are a coin to us really in this format. But what's funny, and for me, the highlight of the entire weekend is we actually went to dinner with them. We know we're playing them the next day, but they're our friends.
The night before.
So they're our friends. The night before, we go to sushi, all you can eat sushi. Jason has like an entire salmon by himself.
Sashimi salmon, yeah, it was unreal.
It was.
He was eating a half hour
in a disgusting kind of way. Like Golem eating a raw fish in the Lord of the Rings. That was Jason just piling fish into his mouth.
Looked exactly like him. Yeah.
I shared a room with him too, man. I was scared that night. I thought he was gonna grow gills,
But we have the super pleasant evening with them, and the next morning, now it's game time, right? And there too, I think, and Chris, you can expand on that, but I think that there too, the pairings is what gave us the advantage.
Yeah. So we had a script that we kind of followed, right? It was Jason, me, 3 attackers, as we said.
Let's go over their list first. Let's go over their list.
Go ahead.
This is a special round, so let's they have a Grey Knight player. Jesse's playing Grey Knights, and it's kind of along the same lines of the Grandmaster Grey Knight list. A couple of tweaks because Jesse's been playing them for a while. They had Ridvin Skari, who's the Archon, as he's known.
Second Archon right now, to be honest.
Oh, second Archon right now.
No, he's first.
Did he pass you? Oh, he passed.
Well, it depends. I'm ahead in the global ranking for Canada, but he's above me for Dark Eldar.
Ah, so he's the true Archon. Yeah,
he's the true Archon.
Yeah. No.
He's a true Archon.
Spoiler alert.
Faction specific.
Proved that.
Yeah. Anyways, he's been playing Dark Eldar since he was knee high to a grasshopper.
He's not a filthy bandwagoner like me. He's a true Dark Eldar player.
That's right. They had Adam. They had the Dark Angels. I scored 90 points without moving out of my deployment zone list.
Yeah.
And then they had Diogo, who was playing your typical orcs. If I go first, you're not going to make it to second turn list. And of course, they had Dustin Henshaw from the Stutter Scrub podcast, who was also a super highly rated player, who also had access to the new Tyranid strategies.
Oh my God, the new Tyranids are so good.
Yeah, and he's primarily a GSC player, so he likes to use the blips as the added tech piece, the 180-point patrol, the best 180-point patrol you can get, so that you can't interact with him really turn one because he's zoned out. So he's got the Hive Guard, the Bar. So anyways, I wanted to highlight them because this was our our butt clenching round.
I thought this was table one. I was like, this is table one. Tournament should end after this round, but
Yeah.
No, it was great. So we actually went in with the standard. This is what we do. Jason first. So we started with Jason, and do you remember who they put against Jason?
Jesse and
Adam, didn't they?
Adam. Yes.
Yeah, so they put their Dark Angels and their Grey Knights against Jason. Jason's list, if you get into the Dark Angel Space Marine off, I think the Dark Angels can outscore them, kind of, personally, depending on how it goes. So we took the Grey Knights just to get them out of the equation for the rest of the team. Jason's list does do pretty good against Grey Knights because he has a lot of Thunder Hammers. He's very fast and mobile, and Grey Knights are actually kind of slow, believe it or not. I know they'll say otherwise, but they are slow, and he can kind of outspeed them. So we took the Grey Knights for sure, and then we were going to lead with me.
Well, first they put Dustin as their
correct. They put Dustin,
and we were expecting that.
We were 100%. We knew he was coming down because. Why wouldn't you put Tyranids as your first defender? They're the best. And we had a plan to put Nick and Will into them.
Right, so Grey Knights and Admech.
Grey Knights and Admech. And the night before, that was we talked for I think an hour, maybe not an hour. That's pretty long. But
well, we watched the soccer as well, so.
But that was like our thing was
who gets
we wanted to put Nick and Will into Dustin, and we wanted them to pick Nick.
Exactly. I said they will never pick me, but if we can't, we sat down, we had a very honest conversation. Nobody wanted to play Dustin because we're all like, that's a big potential for a 0 for everybody. But we've said, we were honest, who are the best to claw out of that? And it's Will and it's me. And so we said, he's going to go down. We know that for sure. They're going to put him first and we'll put us. But we were very optimistic he was going to pick me.
I thought he was going to pick you. I thought for sure.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I thought for sure.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I think that's what I said the night before, if I remember correctly. I don't want to, obviously a lot's happened, but I was hoping they would pick you. And then we would have the AdMech list for the later matchups, right?
Yeah.
But if they picked Will, it's not the end of the world. AdMech can do damage against Tyranids, so it's
I
fine.
suppose, Dustin plays Jesse regularly against his Grey Knights, and I mean, there was no secret that I was going in there with almost no Grey Knight experience, so I mean, possibly they were figuring that was a free 20. I mean,
no, it was definitely never a 20. I don't think that. I think it was like a 15 worst case, but I could be wrong, but I think so. Anyway, that was so we were happy. So they picked Nick, and then we went okay. And we were going to put me down, but then I think I turned to Nick and I said, I'm going off script. And I think we dropped Will.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
this is the one game of the entire tournament where we didn't put you down as a defender, right?
Correct. And we did it very specifically because we were hoping that they would drop Adam. And then that would mean that it would be basically me and Francois versus Adam. And I was thinking he would probably pick Francois, and then they would throw me down the line and give me a red into Scary. And my thought process on that was because we both mess up Dark Angels, right? I have a gajillion mortal wounds. I have 2+ armor save. I can sit in a forest and cover, and you can't really shoot me off with Stormbolters.
And Drezar.
Yeah, so we were so I was banking on them dropping Adam, and they did. And so having me and Francois there as opposed to Will was huge because AdMech get blunted into Dark Angels hard.
Yeah.
Like a hard blunt.
That's not the matchup you want. You don't want AdMech into Dark Angels.
And it worked, and I was stoked. Yeah. And I was like, well, I'm going to get a loss. I was literally like, I'm going to get a loss, but Francois is going to, get an 18 or something. And then I'm going to get a 0 versus Scary, right? Because Sisters and Dark Eldar, I don't like it. Yep. And maybe it's just me personally. My new list, I've never tried it against Dark Eldar, and my new list is a lot different than my traditional list, but I didn't want to take a chance at a live team event on the final table, essential top table in my opinion.
That's where they threw us a curveball because that's not what they did.
No, they picked me into Adam, and I was like, oh, I'm going to get a win. I was stoked. I was like, holy moly. And then Francois went into Scary, and I was like, oh, 10-10. Dark Eldar 10-10. Yeah. That's what I thought. Yeah. But I was stoked. I saw that pairing, and I went, and I think I turned to you, Nick, and I said, you need a 6, which means you just need points. Yeah. Because Jason's in a great matchup, I'm in a great matchup, and Francois is in a tie. So and then Will is Will. You never know.
Yeah. So to make a long story short, because we're starting to run a little bit long here, Nick managed to do exactly what he needed. In fact, a little bit more. He went above and beyond, got a 9. Chris told him get a 6. He got a 9.
Well,
So
I
that's
didn't
great.
mean actually get a 6. I meant
I
like,
know, but at
yeah.
least.
I was like, Dustin, you better have more points. I'm only supposed to get a 6.
Will Zadmak goes first into Diogo's orcs, and he was playing the table next to me, and I glance at it at one point, and I see that Will's planes have moved and the orc planes have not. Then I turn back to my game. Then I glance over again, and there's no more orc planes on that table. So that was that ended up being a 20 for Will. Jason, I believe, also went first into Jesse's Grey Knights, and his super aggro list did what it does. So now we're on 2 20s, and Chris has a very favorable matchup into Dark Angels. So the round is basically won there. I underperformed a little bit. So I'll be honest, I didn't expect to win that game because
why? You're playing the same army.
Well, yes and no, because his list is very much tailored for the mirror and mine is not. And I have no experience in the mirror because locally I'm the only Dark Angel players, Dark Eldar player. So before that game, I had never played into Drukhari into Drukhari, which is weird because they're everywhere, but apparently not here. And
no, it makes sense.
I definitely, thinking back on it, there's things I would do differently if we were to play that game again. But that said, this is the only game I lost of the entire tournament, and it was my favorite game because Ridvan was a fantastic opponent. We were joking around, laughing, had a great time. I got a little flustered at the end because things weren't going my way, and he was helping me remember things. That's a sign of a great opponent when I'm making mistakes and forgetting some of my own rules, and he's just reminding me of things, right?
And I could see it, like, because my game finished early, and I could see it. And I remember coming up to you and trying to be a good captain and being like, "It's okay. You can breathe. You can slow down." You know what I mean? I don't know if that helped or not, but.
You know what? I got really flustered that game.
I could tell, man. Like, you were profusely sweating, and you were beet red. And like, I was like, I gotta just be like, it's okay, it's okay.
So things weren't going my way. From the start, things weren't going my way, and then I had a moment where my competitive edge succubus failed to kill 5 witches, and then 2 units of incubi failed a 5-inch charge.
Well, now you know how it feels. Yeah.
I got into my own head. And everyone who's ever played Warhammer knows this feeling, right? When things start to snowball out of control and you get panicky a little bit. And I ended up scoring a 1.
Well, and it's also compounded by the team of, like, because you also have your team that you're worried about letting down, right? Because at this point, I know turn 1, I'm sure all of us were on edge, right? Because they're.
Well, and we also knew going in that was the match, right? This was probably going to decide, in our heads anyway. We went into it thinking whoever wins this probably wins the tournament. Yeah. So it's a pretty important moment. But anyway, I feel like I could have definitely played that better, but that's the beauty of team tournaments. Your team bails you out sometimes. And that was one of those times. So
well, I don't even know if we bailed you out. Like you took the scary matchup. Like, that was a scary matchup for everybody, and somebody had to take it, right? And maybe to you feel like you underperformed, but in the end of the day, shit happens. And I remember in the old editions where we had like C's. No, it was like 1 in 6 chance you seize. Yeah. Every round, one player got seized on, right? Yeah. So you just got screwed. And so if you translate that to the new edition, like, you just it just happens, right? You go second in a coin flip matchup, right? And it just happens. And as long as your team is smart enough to have like 2 coin flip matchups or only 1, you chance it, right?
Exactly.
And I just want to kind of give a little advice, because that Dark Angel list is very scary, but all you have to do, and I know it's easier said than done, is I killed all the OBSEC bikes, I think by turn 2. And then all he had was a ball of Terminators in the middle of the board, and I just held all the objectives. You have to win on primary, right? That's it.
Yeah, definitely don't start trying to kill the Terminators. That's a horrible plan.
you can, but the bikes should be dead first, and but yeah, no, it was awesome. Yeah, it was actually quite a big win. I think we won by 13 points.
So totally, we won 66 to 34. So we scored almost double the points. It was a big win.
No. I mean, so a win is 53. So we won by 13 points, which is a whole winning game.
That's a whole game, yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole 6-player, yeah.
Dustin was a fantastic opponent, by the way. I had a tremendous amount of fun. Him and I are very similar in terms of our banter. Anyways, it was great. And there was a point in the game, early in the game, where I actually got line of sight on his Hive Guard. and for 2 turns shooting 2 Grandmasters with all the buffs, didn't kill him. He had 3 left. And I was like, okay, that was my play to kind of win this game because, if I get rid of them, I don't have to worry about my backfield, right?
Correct. Yeah.
But if they stay there, then I do have to worry about my backfield. So the more I lose at this point, the less I have an opportunity to claw back from a loss. So him and I were chatting, and I'm like, Dustin, I've got these Grandmasters next to your deployment zone. I want to go in and kill you, but I can't. I said, I have to pull back and go sit on objectives. He's like, I shouldn't be telling you this, but that's exactly what you should do. And I was like, yeah, I know. But fuck, man, I want to kill you. But anyways,
Yeah.
That's all I did. Hid for the rest of the game because, I looked at Chris and he's like, you need at least 6 points. And I was like, okay, that's what we're going to do. And there were 2 turns, 4 and 5. I didn't shoot anything.
No, and that's the reality of it. Now, we were lucky in that we had 3 games end early, which put us at a win.
Yeah.
So I don't. It's not really nice to say that, but like you guys knew that your games didn't matter. And
no, it was like turn
you
4.
were playing.
Turn 3, 4. We looked at each other. Oh well, I guess our game doesn't matter, but we still play to get as many points as we want.
It matters to win the tournament. Yeah, like you need the battle points, so it does matter, but. It should have taken the pressure off, and maybe Francois wouldn't have had a heart attack, but he's close. Oh my God, man! But it was obviously there. We know them all really well. A lot of them are going to the WTC or have gone with us, and so it was an awesome round, and it felt really good to beat them because we weren't necessarily that personally, I wasn't that confident going into that tournament in general. And that was like, I was like, Northern Defenders, big win. Stutter Scrub, I think that's 13 points. That's a big win to me. I felt like that was a big win. They played the other Ottawa team, and they beat them by 1 point. And the other Ottawa team played another, I think, Sam's team and lost by 1 point, right? And it was, or the other way around, I think. But so it was like, when these, I guess the perceived really top teams are playing each other, they're having really close rounds, and we had an easy round, and maybe it was a fluke, and maybe it was luck, but whew,
yeah, at that
we
point,
knew an hour into the round that we won. That was insane. Like
Yeah,
an hour and a half in the round, we knew it was over. Like we had 3 games. The first 3 games were all 40.
at that point, we're
points.
feeling really good, but this is still a 16-team tournament with 5 rounds, so technically, someone can still win with a loss. So the final round does matter. If we had gotten dumpstered in our final round, we would not have won the tournament, right? And so final round, we go into the first place holders, Sam Procopio's team, and good players.
And I should say, so I had the pleasure of spending not the last, but like 3 or 4 months working with Sam. He was an applicant for the team, and he's a really strong up-and-coming Blood Angels player, and he's won quite a few RTTs. And I don't know his friends that well in that team. Some of them I know, and they're usually they do quite well on quite a few of them. So I'm not going to lie to you guys. I was nervous that we would choke, and that they and this was by no means this was a hard team to play. Right,
because this one going into it, so on paper we're probably favored, but it's not by that much that something can't happen, right?
Well, they have I'd say one of the better Necron players I've ever around. Period.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, I would say Sam's probably, I think he's top ranked Blood Angel player.
Canada, for sure. Yeah.
He plays pure though. He plays pure. He plays pure Blood Angel. And then so we were like, this could be kind of scary, right? And they had good lists, and Mark Wang sadly was playing Dark Eldar. No, I'm just kidding. I played so much Company of Heroes with Mark Wang over the pandemic. But yeah, so I was by no means that confident, but we went with our standard plan. Put Jason down first, get him in a favorable matchup, put me down, and I ended up picking Sam's Blood Angels because, to me, Sisters go really nice into Marines these days, especially my list, 12 multi-meltas and Mortal Wounds out the Yin Yang. And then you played...
I played the Necron.
Yeah, you did play the Necron. Oh, yeah, that was a hard game.
So the Necron list, for anyone not familiar with Necrons, he was playing 3 big units of Lich Guards with shields, and between the invulns, the natural saves, the reanimation, those are very hard to crack. Now, as it happens, one of the few armies that can actually crack those bricks is Dark Eldar, just from weight of attacks. But he was also playing 2 Catans.
Some would say every army they can crack.
And true. I don't have Psychic, right? So I can only do damage in 2 phases unless he charges me and I do damage in Overwatch. And so Catans are actually bad news for me. So,
2-man.
I expected a win. If I'd planned it out in my head beforehand, I would have told you I'm expecting a 14 or 15. That sounds reasonable. That's exactly what I got. But it was, it was a hard game. There's a point where the Void Dragon tanked 5 Dark Lances. I only needed to do 3 wounds in shooting because he had charged me. I had done damage in Overwatch. I needed 3 wounds in the shooting phase, and then my Incubi and Drazar are on him. No more Void Dragon. 5 Dark Lances, 2 Blasters, 0 damage. So that made it a little bit harder than it needed to be, but that was a tough game. But see, unlike the Scary game, that one I never got flustered into my own head. So even when things started to go wrong, I still kept it together.
Good stuff. And Nick, who'd you play?
I played against AdMech, the typical, 2 or 3 flyers. I can't remember, Rust Stalkers, Las Cannon Chickens, and this one had the Lucius Guittari blobs, 2 of those. Those were, with the solar flare, so those were real tough to lift and stuff. And this was another one I was worried about because I had my one practice game with Grey Knights. I knew that this could go belly up in one turn if all the Lascans go through and pick up Grey Knights. So luckily it was the Dawn of War with 3 objectives in our deployment zone. So same thing. I went for banners, purifying ritual, and he had like a million models. So I was like, okay, I'll do no prisoners because I'm probably going to have to kill them anyways. And he went first. He played it a little conservatively. He reserved his planes. I think he was worried I was going to pick them up turn 1 if I went first. That meant he would have... also on turn 1, then he hit all his last chickens. He didn't bring them out. So turn 2, he got his Alpha Strike with all of the, Mars buffs and whatever else. I just got really good at rolling 4-ups. And then knowing that, I only lost 1 Grandmaster that turn 2, I was like, okay, now I can push back. And I got lucky in pushing back. It was a bit back and forth, but I think I brought it out to a 13-7 win for me.
Good stuff.
So we ended up with another big win, 71 points in that round, which puts us at a commanding lead in first place for the tournament, 369 points total, which is 32 points before the second place team, which is a lot in a WTC format. So
yeah, it's quite a bit. Yeah, you think about that. That's like 3 ties almost ahead, and that was pretty good. And that we're the only team that went 5-0 as well, which was nice. And it's always nice to get, I know this is kind of braggadocious, but it's like it's always nice to get like the true win, like the 5-0, as opposed to like we got the most battle but we lost a round.
There could have been 4 4-1 teams, and then the tiebreaker becomes the number of points, and that's just messy, right? Having the clean 5-0 definitely feels good.
Yeah, like because sometimes battle points, and then you're like, well, they had an easier run than me, and I had an easier run than them, and people, it's like it's not strength of schedule. It doesn't take into account like whether you got your loss first or whether you got your loss last. Whereas for us, it was like, boom, we got the full 5 wins, and we got the most battle points. So even if we would have. Well, we probably wouldn't have if we would have lost, but you know what I'm saying. So it was nice to be on top on both metrics.
It's very clear.
Yeah, very clear. It felt really good, and it was kind of surreal. Like it didn't sink into me till the next day, to be honest. I was like, okay, yeah, we won, okay, and then we just packed up and left, and even our car ride home was like pretty mellow.
Yeah.
Well, it's exhausting, right? 2 days of Warhammer, and then you got to drive back from Sudbury. So I stayed an extra night in the hotel with Will, and we drove back the next morning, which made for a very relaxed drive back. We left at 8 a.m. It was it was light out, and it was a very pleasant drive, and I'm so happy I did that.
Oh, we had victory Taco Bell. Oh yeah, we went to Taco Bell, and we got victory like boxes of Taco Bell.
I am not eating Taco Bell
ever again.
Will and I went to Lot 88, and we had victory ribeyes, so I think we win.
You win, but you definitely win. We won in a kind of like
in a gross way.
Yeah, very disgusting.
I will say very special mention to the team who came in second, Big Dice Energy. That's our friends from Ottawa, Jeremy, Charlie, Jean, Zach, and having team, number 1 and number 2 teams be from Ottawa, for me anyway, feels really good. It shows that yes, our local meta is in fact very, very hard, and those 10 players, our team and their team, is basically what our RTTs look like, and they also perform really
Yeah,
well.
that's exactly it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I was proud of them. It's nice to see like the other Ottawa guys that a couple of years ago were maybe like more for a laugh, and now are like crushing people, and were like really terrifying to play against. But and maybe they would have liked a shot at the title, but if you want to play for the title, you got to earn it before you actually get to play for it. So.
All right, so you heard that, guys. Next year we'll see about a rematch.
You can't expect to play a team that's won all their games when you lost one. I don't know.
They really wanted to play us last round, and in a way that would have been fun, but in another way it would have just felt like a Saturday RTT. So I don't know which way I'm.
Yeah, and we do have to it's not always fun going to the RTT the next weekend and then having to play the guys that you just beat in Sudbury, right? So
because part of the appeal of these larger events out of town is to meet new people and play new people. Even if some of them are your friends, like we have friends in Toronto and other places that we know, but we don't play against them week in, week out, right? So it's fun to get a game in. And if you go to an out-of-town event and like what tends to happen to Nick, all you do is play Ottawa people. It's a little bit of a letdown.
Yeah, but you're the best, you're the best, I guess, right? And
so a very successful weekend. Thank you so much to the organizers of the Beer and Pretzel Open. We will definitely be back because that was a beautiful event. Good food, good venue, fantastic coffee. I know that sounds like a small detail, but just a free on-demand coffee.
Well, we have to defend our title too. We have to defend the belt, right?
Yeah, well,
get the belt, right?
Yeah, before we get off the coffee thing, it was an Italian hall, and I think we're kind of known for that. So, but no, I think a repeat might be in order for us. Go back and
much to this may have.
I will say though. So I believe there's only been 3 team tournaments in Sudbury history, and CanHammer has only attended 2 of them and has won both of the ones in which it attended. So, the other one we did not go to.
We would keep that going. So next year, if you're listening and you're on the fence and there's a team tournament near you, definitely go. If you're within driving distance of Sudbury, come play with us next year. Find a team, get a team together, and go. It is so much fun.
And congrats to CanHammer for winning BPO 2022.
I mean, it was really fun, and then we got the little Pure seals as trophies.
No, I'm just congratulating us for winning.
You're congratulating.
I'm not even that arrogant. Come on, I'm not that cocky. It's gonna be a different meta, man. Different meta.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, on that note, I think we've gone on for long enough. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Chris, for joining us.
Coming up April 23rd, 24th.
Oh, yes, we do need to mention, speaking of team tournaments, that we have the CanHammer team tournament coming up in April. Thank you, Nick, for the reminder. I don't know exactly when the tickets are going to go on sale, but presumably soon-ish. So as soon as we have more information on there, we will share that with you. Be on the lookout on the CanHammer Facebook page. You can also follow Nick and I on Twitter. We are semi-active on there. Just type Chris is active too. You can find us. Just type CanHammer on there. You'll find us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support, and we'll catch you next time.